Hello. Okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. Here is my spoiler-free review of a Minecraft movie, a fantasy adventure comedy directed by Hess, who also directed Napoleon Dynamite, and it's an adaptation of a very popular game called Minecraft, a game that I've never played. I'm very aware of it, and to be honest with you, I've never really had the urge to play the game. I've always been intrigued by the concept of it and sort of that idea of building this world and crafting all these items and all of that, but I've just never really wanted to sit down to play it. So I don't have that emotional attachment to this adaptation like a lot of other people are going to have for this movie. The game first came out in 2011, I believe, and so I am very aware of it, just never played it. So I'm not going to be able to compare. I'm not going to get any sort of the Easter eggs or any of the familiar characters. It's all going to be lost on me. So here we've got a Minecraft movie, and it follows four misfits who find themselves struggling with ordinary problems when they are suddenly pulled through a mysterious portal into the overworld, a bizarre, cubic wonderland that thrives on imagination. So, a Minecraft movie. Just like with the video games, this is not a film that I've found myself wanting to rush out and watch. Like, one of the reasons being, I don't have that emotional attachment to the games in which it's adapting. But it got me intrigued at the same time, just because of that sort of creative, imaginative side of the concept, sort of going into this world where they can craft whatever they like, and sort of that aspect of sort of the video game, and sort of just seeing that brought to life on the big screen in this form. I mean, it's got me intrigued, at least. And what I will say is, a Minecraft movie for me was a very bizarre, wacky, goofy, odd, and energetic experience. Like, this is a film with an energy in it that just doesn't let up. And it's very consistent with that energy as well. Like, it just breezes along, skipping or skimming across any character development. And even though there is an attempt at creating character and injecting a heart into this movie, it is so breezy with how everything sort of just flows, with how the narrative sort of flows along. It just results in a very kind of soulless, empty, weightless experience. Yet it's one that was so bizarre and wacky and goofy that I couldn't help but be compelled by it. Like, this is a movie that kept me locked in. I mean, I wasn't sort of like, incredibly invested in it or, incredibly immersed into these characters' stories and whatever, but I was compelled by how the world of Minecraft was being brought to life from a technical perspective, from a visual perspective. Yet, at the same time, the film, I just did not care for the story, the very thin story, and the character's journey within that story. I mean, like I said, there is an attempt there to inject that heart, and you do get an idea, a basic idea of who these characters are, where they're coming from. Like Jason Momoa's character being this sort of past, arcade champion and all of that. And I get who these characters are, but it just doesn't, the film doesn't give enough time for these characters to really sort of breathe and for them to really sort of come alive. Yet at the same time, to some degree, I just found this experience to be fascinating and very intriguing by how it was all being brought to life. Look, I'm just going to get the positives out of the way here, because believe it or not, for me anyway, personally, there were positives about this experience. This wasn't an unwatchable movie. This wasn't a disaster or anything. The film somewhat holds together. Yes, there's a lot of aspects about it that just didn't work for me, and overall, as an experience, this isn't really a film for me. At the same time, there was still something to get out of it, whether it be how, I appreciated the film was brought to life from a technical perspective, which is what I really want to talk about, because that was the one thing that I found myself really appreciating about this experiencing and actually enjoying, was how they would bring these characters, these different creatures, and just the world of Minecraft to life. I was pleasantly surprised to see the use of practical effects within this movie. Like, don't get me wrong, there's an awful lot of CGI used, but I just really liked how they blended both practical and CGI together in a way that just made the whole experience, even though there is no soul or weight or depth to it, still feel like it was tangible, like it was, you felt like that these characters were there within this world and existing. And I just thought the blend of practical, for example, actual costumes sort of on these creatures and then sort of enhanced by CGI and all of that, I just found it to be visually pleasing. Like, they could have easily have just relied on CGI for a lot of different aspects within this movie, and I was just pleasantly surprised where you would see a certain creature, like the villain, for example, and yes, there are CGI elements to it, but then it's got an actual costume on top of it. Or one of our characters will end up in this kind of room, and it's a set that's actually been built that resembles the world of Minecraft, but it's actually there, it exists, it's not just CGI or it's not green screen. And I found myself appreciating that aspect of the movie. And I just feel like visually, even though I've never played the games, visually I feel like they did a good job at capturing the look and the feel of the world of Minecraft. And not just creating this kind of splurge of CGI, just creating something that not only doesn't have any character, soul or heart or depth, but then you've also got this kind of CGI fest where it just adds to all of that kind of weightlessness that I was feeling through the experience. There was a passion there, at least, to create this world in a way that didn't rely on or heavily rely on CGI, and I really appreciated that. But other than from a visual perspective and a technical perspective, the film did nothing for me. Yes, there are moments that actually made me laugh, made me chuckle. I think Jack Black is great here. He really leans into his classic, familiar Jack Black mannerisms, and he is clearly enjoying himself. Like, there is something, when you can sort of feel that an actor, no matter how shit the movie is, or, no matter where the movie sits in sort of how you feel about it, if you can sense that the actors are giving their all, giving their best, then, there is something satisfying about that. And there's something about Jack Black in this movie where I just couldn't help at times just smirk and chuckle. There's certain things where he would say a certain line and proper just sort of amp it up to 100, and it would make me laugh. And I also liked sort of the inclusion of the adult humour within this movie. There is something for adults. So when you take your children to go and see this film, kids are going to get something out of it as well as adults. And tonally, the movie works quite well because the film is very aware of itself. It leans heavily into what it is. It doesn't pretend to be something that it isn't. And as a result, I felt this is why the film as a whole somewhat works. Like, it might not be for me, but it is a movie that is very aware of itself. It knows what it wants to be, and it leans heavily into that. It's wacky, it's bizarre, it's goofy, and it just amps it up to 100, and it leans into that goofiness, it leans into that wackiness, and as a result it becomes an experience where, yeah, it's empty, it's soulless, there's no depth that I couldn't get, I couldn't care about the characters, but at the same time be somewhat sort of compelled or intrigued by what is happening, what is going on. And like I said, a lot of that is because of the way the film, I felt, was brought to life from a technical perspective. I actually really like Jennifer Coolidge here. She was actually, I found her to be quite funny. I mean, she leans into, again, like what I said, what the movie is. It's goofy, it's bizarre, and it's very silly, but there are moments with her character where you have that adult humour, and yeah, you can't help but chuckle, but there is still an emptiness and a weight, you know, a sort of a weightlessness to it all, where, yes, you can have something from it, whether it be some of the performances or from, you know, a technical perspective, a visual perspective, but by the end of it, for me anyway, personally, I have no urge to rush out and see this movie again. Jason Momoa was probably one of the most annoying aspects within this movie. I didn't like what he was doing with the character. There's just something about him in these movies recently where he does this same sort of kind of like scream. He screams a lot, and he actually looked very bored. Like, he didn't look like he wanted to really be there. You know, there was a sharp contrast between Momoa's character and Jack Black's character. And I know they're playing two completely different characters, but Jack Black was clearly enjoying himself. He was having a fucking blast. And then Momoa was just doing Momoa. And yeah. And even though this movie just didn't do anything for me, it wasn't for me, at the same time, it did kind of transport me back to being a kid again. It did have that kind of, that vibe of being a film or a TV show that you would watch early morning on the weekend on ITV, or for those of you lucky enough with Sky on the Disney Channel. It had that kind of feel to it. And what I feel like this film is going to work for its target audience, and that is kids. I believe kids are going to lap this up. They are going to love it. And my audience, the audience that I was within watching this film, was proof of that. Now, I wouldn't say it was a rowdy audience, but it was an audience that were clearly passionate about watching this film, about, you know, the world of Minecraft, and, you know, had adults taking their kids along, and you could hear or sense the joy. Like, whenever a familiar character would come on the screen, you know, they'd be clapping, they'd be cheering, and if this had been any other experience, it would have really have pissed me off, okay? But the fact that I could hear this audience enjoying and just having so much joy for what was being brought to life on the big screen, I found that to be incredibly satisfying. Like, it was quite a large crowd. I mean, this movie is done very well at the box office, and people are going in their droves to watch this film, and, you know, that is great for theatres, you know, with cinema at the moment, with the way the world is. I mean, you know, theatres need people coming in their droves, and just to have a crowd like that who were actually well behaved, even though they were loud. I mean, that loudness didn't irritate me because it was a rowdiness, you could say, where there was clear passion for what was being displayed on the screen, for what was coming to life on the screen. It was nothing like what you've seen on videos with, for example, in America, where people are just throwing popcorn all over the place. It was nothing like that. It was a crowd of people who were just having a real good time at the cinema, and just to hear people clapping and cheering, even though it wasn't doing anything for me, I took joy from the fact that the audience that I was within was having a fucking great time. To hear kids laughing, even adults were laughing, and just to sort of hear that joy, there was something incredibly satisfying about that. And, you know, that's just another positive for me, really, personally, to have come out of this movie. Yes, it didn't really do anything for me. It is a soulless, weightless mess where everything just sort of rushes along and there's no character to it. But it was working for a certain group of people. Wherever you grew up with the video games or just kids in general, that's where the movie was working. And I could see as a whole, like, this goes back to what I said at the beginning, this movie does hold together because it knows what it is. It knows its target audience, and as a result, to some level, it works. Even though from a personal perspective, from my own kind of personal sort of opinions, and from what, you know, from what I look for from a personal perspective, it just wasn't hitting the mark for me. I recognized that it was going to work for a hell of a lot of other people, more people other than myself, and as a result, yeah, you know, this isn't an unwatchable movie. This isn't a disaster. So yeah, I didn't hate a Minecraft movie for all the reasons I've just mentioned. I mean, this was still a watchable experience. It was very bizarre, it was very goofy, but it leans into that. And there are moments where I smirked, I chuckled, I laughed, and I appreciated it from sort of a filmmaking perspective in regards to how the world was brought to life, from a visual perspective. Jason Momoa was incredibly annoying here, but then Jack Black, I found Jack Black to be quite amusing, and I like Jack Black in this movie. But yeah, there's no character, there's no weight to it, there's no soul to it, there's no heart to it, even though there is an attempt to inject heart. It is so breezy, with that energy in which this film plays out, that it's just not interested, really. I mean, it kind of wants there to be a heart there, but the characters don't really get enough time to sort of breathe. And so all of that kind of, the character side of it, which it does touch on at the beginning of the movie, is somewhat wasted, but it does give us a kind of a brief understanding of the characters. But at the same time, it's going to work for a certain group of people, and kids being that kind of main group of people, I think kids are going to love it. Not all the humour works for me in it. There is some repetitive humour that sort of runs throughout where I feel like they could have just stopped. I mean, Jack Black's weight being one of them. Like, at the first couple of times, yeah, it was funny, but they just keep going on and on and on. I was like, right, sort of step away now from the jokes around weight, because it's just becoming the same sort of joke. You know what I mean? What I will say is, within the first act, where they're introducing us to these characters, and I suppose throughout the entire experience, it kinda, in moments, it reminded me of a lot of other movies. Spy Kids being one of those, the Lego movies as well as Dungeons and Dragons, and that was more so what they were attempting to do with the characters. And I felt like if it had lent more into what worked for Dungeons and Dragons, like what they did in that movie with their characters, if they'd lent more into that and allowed the characters to breathe just a little bit more and just dig a tiny bit deeper, then this may have been a more effective experience. But it is what it is, and it's not a movie for me. It didn't really work for me, but as I keep on saying now, it's definitely going to work for a certain demographic, a certain group of people that are going to take a lot of joy with this film. Because, as I said, that was proof within the audience that I was watching this with. You could hear the joy of these very familiar, iconic characters coming to life. And there was something just very satisfying about that, especially with the world that we're in right now, where cinema chains, theatres are crying for people to come out and spend money to buy tickets to sort of sit, and watch these films. I was only thinking the other day, gone are the days. I think the last movie that I watched back when I was a kid, where you'd struggle if you weren't quick, you weren't going to get in to watch a film. And I think that was when Revenge of the Sith came out. I remember Revenge of the Sith coming out, and you'd have queues coming out of the cinema. Like, we've got this big cinema complex near where I live, and, there would be queues coming outside of the door, and this is a big building. Today, you don't even get that. Like, don't get me wrong, with movies like Oppenheimer, it was great to have almost sold out showings and all of that. But sort of gone are the days where people have queued and just sort of, you've had to rush to the box office to get your ticket before it sells out. And so when you get moments like this, no matter what the quality of it is and whatever your personal opinions are, for it to bring joy to so many people and to bring people into these theatres to watch these experiences and for them to get something out of it, I find that satisfying and hopeful, no matter what my personal opinions are of the movie. I mean, yes. So look, enough rambling on from me. They are my thoughts on a Minecraft movie, and I would be giving a Minecraft movie They are my thoughts on a Minecraft movie, but what do you guys think? Have you seen it yet? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree with anything I said or disagree with anything I've said? Then let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. I am slowly creeping towards the 500 milestone. And so just, a massive thank you to everyone that have supported myself, the channel, whether it be commenting, subscribing, liking. It just means the world to me. It means an awful lot. So yeah, that's it from me for now. Thank you everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.